We are back on our path. It's a windy and cold day today, a little bit rainy also. But I have a microphone today, so I'm hoping the audio will be a lot better than it has been in the last 2 or 3 sessions that we had. You know, the 3 talks that we had so far, I can say that we could almost construct a scientific development of all of it. We can create falsifiable hypotheses and bring evidence and show which ones work, which ones don't work. It's pretty grounded what we did so far. But this talk, I think we are going to let our imagination fly a little bit. It's going to be forward-looking, futuristic, may not be completely grounded in fact or reality as we see it today. We are going to try what it might open up. So the first thing we are going to ask is, what is the change in form that the human species might go through? You know, we have like in India, there are all these images of gods and goddesses that have, you know, 4 arms, and the intent behind that is that they are able to do a lot. They can take action in the real world that is superior to what a human could take. But, you know, is that where we are headed? Are we going to sprout 2 extra arms? Maybe, maybe not, who knows, right? But it seems unlikely to give an evolutionary advantage, because what we saw in one of the previous talks is that technology can enhance the individual. And with technology, we have built not just extra arms, but we have built wheels and robots and all kinds of machinery and instruments that extend our capability. But at the same time, nature has developed, you know, things like octopuses and obviously insects and other things, but octopuses particularly have 8 arms and are extremely intelligent, problem-solving creatures with a completely different form. And similarly, nature has developed lots of other forms that can go without food for a long time, that can survive all kinds of conditions for a long time. And some animals such as crocodiles, sharks, they haven't actually changed their genetic form for 400 million years. So nature has found stable apex points that are different from the human form. But still, in the steps of the human evolution, growing extra arms or some sort of biological means of effective interaction with the world in this sort of gross change of form, who knows, maybe it's in the cards, but you know, it's way beyond my imagination to see how we can get there. So I think the major form changes I personally don't see on the cards, as the next steps in the human evolution. But there could be minor form changes, just as we bred out the appendix as we started to learn how to cook, how to control fire. Similarly, we know that the brain structure, the neocortex, has grown richer just in the last let's say million years or so, and that is a change in form. Similarly, the change in the larynx and much more nuanced, effective vocalization to support communication. I mean, one variation, one change, one evolution that one can imagine could happen is a bit more distributed processing of the sensory inputs that we get and the actuation signals that we send out. To some extent, that already happens. For example, our involuntary functions, breathing and so forth, are already done at a different part of the different segment of the brain. And similarly, if you look at, let's say, the visual processing, the eyes gather the signals, but then the optic center is at the back of the head, and in between there is the optic nerve, and within the nerve itself a whole bunch of processing is happening. So that distribution could grow through changes in form. There was a pretty big storm the last few days, so that's what we are seeing here, the damage from that storm. Let's see if we can navigate this tree, and yeah, we can. So could this distributed processing evolve and grow? For example, what if there was more nervous comprehension, shall we say, of the signals right at our fingertips, right at our wrists and elbows, shoulders, and other extremities like that? Could we be better at music? Could we play the piano better? Could we react faster to certain stimuli or certain circumstances? And if we could, would there be an evolutionary advantage to that? Would that help in mate selection? Would that get passed on in the progeny, etc.? It's not, who knows, maybe it can. That might be a promising direction. But if you look at the acme of achievement by individuals, take an Einstein or take Mozart, somehow that singularity was created by nature and by society, that overlapped other people. But I don't see that got passed along. Their children, their progeny of these singular individuals may have sort of started to regress towards the norm. And in that sense, nature is a very, evolution is a very conservative, a very reinforcing sort of process. It would rather rely on the stability of the general characteristics of the species than on the extremities of individuals. Well, that's the process, so someone somewhere exceeds the form and shows the possibility and then pulls the general population along. The other small changes that evolution has brought in, the neocortex of the brain and essentially the density of neurons and their interconnections, and if you look at it from the bottom up, from a scientific point of view, what they are saying is that this is the emergent property, consciousness as an emergent property of the density of neurons that are out there. Of course, the spiritualist view, as we said earlier, is looking from the top down, waiting for this evolutionary support for the higher principles that are waiting to be manifested. But whatever it is, whether it is top down, bottom up, the density of neurons is a evolutionary change at the small level that has happened. I think the promising direction, another promising direction for evolution is the change in language. Last time we ended with the evolution, the step function from I am to I am that. And all of our machinery for language and for processing is really based on the I am. And it is embedded in our language structure and in other logical processing structures that we have developed. The I am that machinery and the I am that culture and nurture is, I think, another big step in the evolution that we can see. Now, how much do we need to change? Do we need to add 10 times as much neuron density? Do we need to update our fingertips to be more conscious, our tongue and ears to be more conscious? Maybe. But I think the other small evolutionary changes that we will see are, and these are just both nature and nurture changes that we will see. Oh, here's a newt. some more changes both in nature and nurture that we are likely to see is related to the amount of time we have to spend to accumulate the energy that we need to keep going. Already it has reduced a lot, and over time humans have become more and more efficient in how they collect, store, process food. We are obviously supporting a huge population, 7 billion people on the earth, and there doesn't seem to be any immediate limit to that capability to support the population, at least the human population. We'll come back to the species diversity that we need to support later on. But I think a small evolutionary change could very well be about how much time and energy we have to spend to gather the energy that we need to grow and to keep going. We are at a rock, and I'm going to try to climb. It's a bit wet again, but I think we should be okay. And we are at the first stage, at the stage of the cathedral of tall trees. Let me see if I can show them. There's some tall trees starting there, and going all the way around. Now we can look at them at our usual angle. As you can see, I'm wearing jeans today. Since we talked about genes, the individual, the marketing, and the conformity of individuals, while thinking they are different and individualistic out of that. So I thought, well, why not wear jeans today? Yeah, I think this richness of the human experience, of the ability to gather energy and grow, will be one aspect of change that we will see. Okay, so now we come to the real heart of evolutionary change that we should like to see. And again, I'm going to draw a little bit upon the spiritual experience of many people. And it's an experience and a tradition that occurs and recurs and is renewed across millennia, across cultures, across individuals, societies, and so on. And that is the sort of mystical experience of oneness. There's an interpenetration of consciousness of the individual with the environment. You can be between two individuals, multiple individuals. It could be just with other living things, inanimate objects, but it's an experience that is very valid. We are back at the gorge. I'm going to go through. This experience of oneness, obviously we feel it. I mean, those who have the grace of that experience have felt it. And people have developed a language to explain, to express what it is. One related emotion that we all feel is what we call love. That has this interpenetrating quality between the individual and the beloved, whatever it is. It could be a thing, it could be a person, it could be an idea, whatever it is. This feeling of exceeding, of mingling is felt, fairly common experience that people have. But our language for expressing even just love, but even more so expressing this sort of oneness or union is, it's somewhat forced. There's philosophical language, there's poetic religious language that sort of communicates that, but it is not precise. And what if we were to so let me take that back. By what I mean by it is not precise is that even though what someone expresses might very precisely be what they have experienced, we don't know definitively that the person who hears that or reads that expression has that same experience that the person who said it had. Whereas when I tell you the number 2, we can be relatively objectively sure that what I meant by the number 2 and what you understood by the number 2 is more or less the same thing. So there's that sort of precision in the communication and understanding of that concept. And we are not sure if that is precisely there in these other expressions of these so-called higher types, the love and oneness. But then what would be the language of oneness be? In this precisely communicable, sort of understandable setting. For example, I'm standing right here and I'm seeing this bay tree, and I can say, I see this bay tree. And suppose there was someone else, they could also say, I see this bay tree. And then we could have a common terminology which says the two of us both see this bay tree. And obviously, if there's a third person, then all three of us see this bay tree. And as soon as you get to more than 2, you start to get subsets. I and this person see this bay tree, but this third person does not see this bay tree, and so on. So we are talking about a common understanding of knowledge or of facts or experiences that are beyond the subjective experience or reality and go into a collective experience or reality. And collective seems to imply that it's between humans, but the trees have their mutual understanding of the bay tree too. There are other trees around here that know there is a bay tree. Now, know is a complex word to use here, but they have grown up and behaved in a certain way that has mutuality with the presence of the bay tree over here, and similarly the bay tree has grown up with that mutuality with the other things around it. So there is this sort of give and take, or this oneness, if you want to call it that, expressed in this collection of trees and rocks and other things. And in a way it is very precise, it's very existential for this bay tree, right? The bay tree is existing in its environment with all these other oak and other bay trees and eucalyptus trees and these rocks, and that's how it is expressing itself, behaving, existing. And can there be a human experience that can be expressible in a communicable manner that becomes existential to the human, that understands this collective mutuality of things in a precise communicable way? And this knowledge, common knowledge paradigm, could be one way of looking at it. I mean, we try to mimic this in some ways. For example, the market, the stock market is the agglomeration of many individuals who make some common guesses, assumptions, etc., and it becomes a very precise, quantified element called the stock price, or some sort of monetary value, quantitative value that is given to this collective understanding of the market. And but I don't think that is, so there are financial experts who live in that environment, in the mutuality of all these numbers flowing through them, and they have evolved in that so-called milieu, that environment, and become that kind of a person. But I don't know if there is a higher level understanding that they can communicate in a systematic manner to someone else. So they're kind of perhaps like the bay tree surrounded by oaks and others in this forest. And that is fine. That is a step towards that evolution. But I'm talking of very precise, quantified language that expresses the mutuality, the commonality of experience, or the agglomeration of experience in a systematic manner. Well, let's make our way out of here and see where this takes us. So I think what we are looking for is the machinery of oneness, machinery of union or multiple viewpoints that can simultaneously speak from one point of view and another point of view and a third point of view, and the collection of all these points of views in a very precise, communicable, exact manner. And not just capture the facts in this precise manner, because that's the first step, but then you come up with the vocabulary of facts and vocabulary of describing this multidimensional looking at of things. But actually the interesting part of the machinery is what we do from our point of view all the time is we simulate forward, we anticipate how things might change in time and what that means to us, and how we should behave in that environment. like let's say sports, ice hockey. You're looking at the puck, you're looking at all the players, and you're skating to where the puck is going to be, or you should be. And we are doing that all the time because we have this machinery that processes the sensory information from our point of view, projects it forward, and then we act in that reality, that projected reality. But what if our machinery can perceive things from multiple points of views simultaneously and simulate all of them individually or collectively forward, and have this holistic multidimensional reality that we can project, that we can simulate, and then we live as individuals as well as collectives in that projected unified view. What would that machinery be? What would that language be? And what would that action be? And is there an evolutionary advantage to it that can be passed along to affect the structure, the nature, the instinct part of ourselves? I think that is probably a deeply fruitful direction to look at this. And to tell the truth, there might be a little bit more machinery needed, but I think a lot of the nurture work, the environmental work that is needed for this, we can carry out now with the knowledge and technology and understanding that we have now. I mean, I can imagine that we can come up with a language and a grammar structure that describes a collection of individual viewpoints and figures out how to carry them forward. That, coupled with the environmental work needed to free up a large segment of human population of the need for spending time on gathering food and the daily necessities. So I think with that combination, we can carry out a lot of this work in our nurture and environment, and there is enough headroom because Einstein's and Mozart's are possible. Our structure has enough headroom to accommodate big changes without needing too much machinery. It's suddenly become quite windy. But I think we are at an end of this series of talks on this topic. A very fascinating, fruitful topic. A lot of people have done a lot of work already, and what we are guessing at, reaching out towards, is what is the most fruitful direction into which we should spend our individual and collective time and energy to get to the next step. So we did that, but I want to bring back the possibility of the octopus or the 4 arms. Who knows, maybe that is possible. And also, who knows, maybe human is not the species that will take the next step in this whatever it is. And we said there are 7 billion humans already, and even though there is no immediate collapse, there's no Malthusian collapse, we are encroaching on nature quite severely. We are not leaving white space habitat for other experiments to keep going. And I think we owe it, well, owe is a big word, but there is a responsibility towards letting multiple paths of progress and evolution to, well, not just survive but to flourish. And as we go towards more efficient production and the use of energy for ourselves, we should try to leave large swaths of nature for experiments to keep going. And the size of the habitat is a big determinant of the variety of experimentation that can happen. And as human societies, etc., progress, we are cutting up nature into bits, and the size of any one of them is diminishing, which then reduces the possibilities even more. So a simple thing that we could do is not just to maintain forests like we have now, like I'm walking through it, but also to connect them, connected forests, connected wildlands. I'm going below the tree again. All right, with that, we will end this series. And here's looking forward to the 4-armed humans or the super conscient octopi of the future.